So, something I wanted to point to before we get into the main meat of this story is this recent event that happened on Twitter, I would say, and I believe that at the moment you're not on Twitter because you've been taken off, if you don't mind me saying.
I've been kicked off.
Yes, you've been kicked off for the sad atrocity of referring to a woman as a whore. Or possibly calling someone white trash, but it's Twitter, so I think...
It was, yeah, and they weren't directed at an individual per se. It was a comment on my own tweet about a story in the Daily Mail. So as a white man who grew up in poverty, I'm allowed to use the term white trash because that's where I grew up.
I don't care about anybody using the term white trash.
And a woman who steals another woman's husband and that family took her in to protect her, and then she steals your husband, to me, is a whore.
I think your judgment is pretty fair there.
But it's Twitter, what can you do?
Yeah, Twitter disagreed, although I think Elon's in the middle of actually buying them now, finally, maybe, although Twitter themselves seems, as far as I'm aware, might be suing, so who knows what's going on with that. But
so if people want to find me now, I'm on Getter.
Well, follow Nick on Getter. But one of the things that happened was this person, Casey Miller, who is a trans man, just posted this tweet out saying, just for some perspective, this is what almost 5 years of hormones does to a teenage girl. Remember, I'm 21. As far as I can tell from having watched this little video, and you can find the link down in the description below. But from what I've seen, it's literally just this guy saying, well, I had a haircut, here's my hairline right now. 5 years ago, I was a teenage girl and I went on testosterone and this is what it's done to me. Nothing really saying you shouldn't do this, nothing coming out and trying to be sensationalist about it. Literally just saying, this is the effects. As far as I'm concerned, pretty, fair thing to point out, because this isn't the sort of thing that I've seen anybody within the online trans community point out could be a side effect. But then, of course, you get the endless kindness and solidarity of the online trans community coming out with people like ContraPoints. Natalie Wynn, are you familiar with this person?
No.
Well, I'm envious of you. She is a trans YouTuber, or barely fits that description anymore because I think she posts like one video a year nowadays, coming out saying this is what 5 years of testosterone does to anyone with genetics for male pattern balding. Should we put cis boys on puberty blockers until they're old enough to decide? I don't get what this kind of comment adds to the conversation other than just mean-spirited dunking on this Casey person who came out and made this original... What seems to have happened is, and we'll see this through a lot of the tweets I'm going to point to in a moment, is that people have seen any sort of referral to the reality of what happens when you go through these kinds of hormone procedures and trans surgeries, any sort of referral to the reality of that is threatening, because they recognise that the reality isn't quite as sexy as what they're trying to sell to people. Like ContraPoints, for instance, always portrays herself in these sort of seductive, revealing outfits in these low lights with pink and purple behind her. But the reality for most people is not going to be that you'll become this new wave internet icon. You're just going to be another person who ends up looking like this, and maybe all of the problems in your life won't be solved. So they just see that and they just go, oh, well, that's a threat to what we're selling, as far as I'm concerned.
I've spent 2 decades working with people like this, not trans people, but people who are actively damaging their own lives and then create their own narrative and their own lies and their own story about why it's great what they're doing for them. So if you're looking at people who are rough sleeping and homeless, living in a street corner in a box, and I'll walk up to them, sit down, chat to them, and they'll say to us, I've chosen this life. I like this. I want to live outside. I want to do this. And you look in their eyes and all you can see is death. And you speak to them and they're lying to themselves and to you. And over several months of working with them, they actually then admit it, that I'm dying. I don't want to be here. But it's the masks we all wear, and it's the mask they wear to get through the day and to stop people asking them questions and to dig. So if I can say I'm happy and I'm wonderful and my life's fantastic, you'll stop asking me questions about it.
That's absolutely what it is. Interestingly enough, relating to that, I'm reading The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt at the moment. Are you aware of it?
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those ones I should have read ages ago. It's a fantastic book so far. But he's talking in the section I'm just reading about confirmation bias and how people's reasoning skills didn't develop so that we could find an easier path to truth. They just developed so that we had better ways of explaining our own biases and trying to convince others of our own biases. And if somebody, like you say, in that situation is just accepted, well, this is how it is, they're just going to come up with reasons to accept that and to convince others to just leave them alone, aren't they, sadly? And that's what I see this as, especially from someone like ContraPoints, who's been accused by many people of encouraging this kind of behaviour and this kind of transition in kids, which is obviously very damaging for a lot of people. But you immediately go on the defensive. The only thing that these people throw out is, well, it's your fault. Everybody would have told you the real risks of it, so it's your fault. It's not my fault for making this seem like a glamorous and sexy lifestyle. It's everybody else's fault for just falling for it. I'm going to convince you to trans yourself, and then I'm going to dunk on you when the consequences come back around.
She has a point. I mean, she's also part of the problem, but she also has a point. I don't want to go down the path of people who are detransitioning or sorry they've transitioned, and I don't want to go down the path where we say to them, you've just been a victim, because do you know what? Unless you was a child when it happened, you weren't a victim. You wanted this. You convinced people you wanted it. So even though we can help them now, we still need to say to them, but this is personal responsibility.
Yeah, we do need to emphasise the personal responsibility, but I also think it's important to remember this Casey Miller person says they're 21 right now, 5 years. So 5 years ago, 16-year-old teenage girl, which is not somebody I would say is in any position to make these kinds of decisions
18.
about.
You're an adult at 18.
Yeah, and even then making such long-lasting, life-changing decisions is still a bit of a stretch even for me.
Yep.
But let's carry on and see some of the other outpouring of care that we've seen from the online trans community. So this is another person trying to sell themselves as this sexy, glamorous lifestyle. This is what testosterone does to a teenage girl, makes her much cooler and smarter and sexier. Remember, I'm 21. Okay, so this is just another epic dunk, and you're looking absolutely ridiculous. This isn't the kind of lifestyle that I would wish on anybody, but okay, you're just trying to sell people an aesthetic. If we move on again...
Just damaged people. That's all this is damaged people.
Very damaged people, sadly. And this person just completely mischaracterizes the original post. I regret a decision that I made with my body, therefore nobody else should have the freedom to make that decision, is the mindset that needs to die in a fire, utter authoritarian paternalistic nonsense. Once again, the original post seemed to just be like, well, here's the reality of what can happen. Yeah. Didn't seem to be directed at trying to threaten anybody or tell them they can't do things, but that's how they've interpreted it, because they take it as a threat to their own sense of self-identity. And then we go... another person who's just making fun, took testosterone and looked like George Costanza. Clearly this is everyone else's fault. Kind of funny. Not gonna lie, the George Costanza thing, but still not exactly the kind of solidarity that you expect from a community that advertises itself as being quite caring. And then one of the last...
You don't get solidarity when you change your mind and you sound like you're going against it. Then you're the enemy. Yeah,
of course, it's just complete friend-enemy distinction. And then this last one, which I think is very telling of more than anything else. I also started hormones as a teenager. 8 years later, I'm a full-grown man with a full head of hair. Sorry, bald with a little wave, which is... You can say that you're a full-grown man with a head of hair, and to be honest, this person obviously passes quite well. If I walk past this person... if I walk past this person in the street, I wouldn't guess that they're trans. But still acting like a petty teenage girl. If I'm completely honest, this kind of reputation destruction, these petty comments are not masculine behaviour. I would argue that the majority of behaviour people take place in online is very petty teenage girl, very feminine behaviour. So once again, you can change the outfit, but you can't change your soul, in a sense, I suppose.
A decent comment from this man would have been, I'm sorry it's not worked out for you, but it's worked out for me and my life's a lot better.
Yeah.
I hope you find peace in the next decisions you make. That would be an acceptable tweet. As in,
absolutely.
You're not agreeing with that person that it's all wrong because it happened and it went well for you, but you're sorry it's not worked out for that person. They're the tweets we should be sending.
Absolutely. That's actually a very nice thought, and it is a shame that a community that advertises itself as so inclusive and caring, the second somebody has basically blasphemed against their rituals and scriptures, you could say, they're more than willing to excommunicate, more than willing to mock and ridicule, because like you say, these people are people who need help for the most part. So the fact that they don't offer each other help is quite sad. But that's just a reminder of what the online trans community is like. And just onto more important matters, such as Eddie Izzard sadly coming out as a politician. which nobody was looking for, nobody was asking for, and advertising himself as I'm for Sheffield, for Labour, I'm putting forward the ideas of fairness and equality, which are not, as Connor pointed out in a quote tweet that he put out, which are not two values that can live side by side with one another. If you want equality, you by definition cannot go for fairness, because equality, raising everybody up to the same level and keeping there, will necessitate a certain level of unfairness, whether that be in hiring practices, the way that you treat certain people. It's completely unfair. So obviously that's just nonsense straight away. But an interesting thing at the end of this is he goes, oh, also, by the way, I happen to be trans, because he knows beyond what he's selling these people as in terms of policy, he knows that what he's selling them is an image. Labour voters of Sheffield, you can vote for me to show what an incredibly progressive and diverse and forward-thinking people you truly are, which doesn't add any value.
Or he could be saying to people, and I'm trans, and I dare you to vote against me.
Yeah, there could always be that.
I dare you. Now, is Sheffield Central an all-female shortlist?
Yes, it was.
Is it still? Because I hope it is. Because if it is, he's done an amazing piece of work for us. Because he's now demolished a female-only shortlist for Labour. It's now not female-only because men. So even though I'm against female-only shortlists, and he's destroyed it for everybody. So thank you.
True.
Thank you, Eddie.
Eddie Izzard, thank you for the public service that you've so obviously done.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
People don't understand what you're doing, Eddie. I understand. You're trying to bring it all down from within. So good on you.
Eddie Izzard, accelerationist, confirmed.
Yeah.